You've seen a lot of changes in the last few years of, hey, rock's dying. Oh, no, wait, rock's coming back. Pop's dying. No, wait, metal's dying. It's going underground again. No, it's not. That's because they're mixing everything. Yeah. Oh, you're hearing this melding of everything.
It's very interactive. I think that's kind of what's happening too, is it's like the audience has a say of what the band kind of does. Like when the band cares, then they're very influenced by the listener. It's a more intimate thing, not only in the shows, but now in the way the communities and the songwriting and all that kind of like are all now one and the same.
Now, before we dive in, I want to let you know about our rock singing success community. If you would like a place to discuss this topic further, a place where you can improve both your voice and music career with courses and other resources, and have a community of other rock and metal singers on the same path, we'll support and encourage you along the way. And join us at school.com/rock singing success. That's SKOOL.com/rock singing success. See you there. Today, let's talk about the music industry. I've been in it professionally for 30 years, and a lot of progressions happened with, and not just music industry, but the progression of music in the industry. So a lot of things, a lot of changes have happened both with the music itself in rock and metal up to how singers approach it too. And I'm not just the last 30 years, but I would say since rock and metal started becoming a thing in the 70s, it's more closer to what it is today. Of course, there was rock in the 50s and 60s, but nothing like it is today. So let's appeal to our metal fans a bit more and go more into the mid to late 70s up till now, and what things look like and what things have changed, especially with the music. Let's start there. So we'll start with music, talk about singing, talk about how that affects you as the listener too. So what have you guys seen? You're from a different generation than me. So like I grew up with the 80s glam bands, and I know you guys are into older music too. And I think that's something to be said for today as well. Like everything's in. Like my 17-year-old son is into late 70s, early 80s rock. And I didn't turn him on to that. He found it on his own. So what are y'all seeing? Just popularity, the progression of music, the way things used to be compared to how they are now.
I kind of like a quick timeline of what I've noticed in general is starting with like the first metal band, which a lot of people will say is just Black Sabbath's self-title. You get into like where I think like death metal, grindcore, all these really heavy modern stuff kind of like stems from more on the like lyrical content and like the mood that is kind of portrayed by Black Sabbath. And then I think the edge they put on the guitars and the distortion, people would take pieces like they do now for like the cross genre, like whether it's nu metal or pop metal. They've taken this thing that has like the edge and the lyricism that took two completely different directions. Like you had glam metal and Metallica, like these evolutions that slowly kind of came apart as, I like this part about this band. I like this part about this band. And then they start combining them into different, own subgenres, from bringing in jazz to the lyricism, bringing in, say, R&B into the edge. And that's where I see a lot of things moving now, is it stemmed from this area of very simple, and people have elaborated on it in different ways and melded it through other genres and subgenres to create this massive amount of subgenres. Metal elitists will be like, you need to know all these, otherwise you're not a metalhead. And then, then that's kind of where we're at now. And the focus, I think, revolves around a lot of that pop element still, like Bad Omens, Bad Wolves. They have some hip hop elements in it. So it leans into a lot of hip hop and pop, where the edge kind of is resembling a lot of what EDM does now. It's like about the drop. It's about the breakdown. It's about the energy. And that's what the live setting, I think a lot of people enjoy with metal is. It's just like a constant adrenaline rush. So you got like EDM crossing with pop, crossing with hip hop where I see a lot of things now in terms of the energy, the approach to the mix and the structure, and then to the delivery.
And going off of that, I think it's interesting you bring up EDM, because I've been going to EDM shows a little bit more recently, and the vibe is exactly the same. And it's so interesting to see how the structure of how DJs put together their sets is it's all revolves around that drop, that bass drop, that point where you grab your friend's hands and your head bang and you're like, yeah, this is awesome. And it's the same in metal shows, and been in metal shows. I'm new to the EDM scene, but with metal shows, I mean, I could think back even in like, I want to say like 2009, 10, 11, when I really started getting into the genre. The breakdown was everything. You'd hear like, oh, you need that super filthy, just you
Yeah,
know,
the
and this thing is
halftime. Yeah.
yeah, and then you just like you grab your well, I don't know if you're grabbing your friends, but you're like you're doing something. You're like yeah, and you're
Throwing
going crazy,
somebody or something. Yes.
and it's all revolving
Just
around.
grab somebody, it's like
You just start right,
banging their head on
right. As
Get in
long
the
as you're not
ground.
as long as you're not throwing freaking kicks in the pit, man, it's all good
Mm,
because no one likes
mhm.
people who kick in the pit.
Yes, it's true. They're out.
But
No
right.
windowing.
But yeah, man, and I think it is really revolved around this emotional kind of content, this lyric, not just the lyricism, but the emotion that it evokes.
Mm,
Um, and with a lot of styles these days really revolving around that, hip hop specifically, that went well, I mean, yeah, hip hop, I say EDM, but EDM does without words does evoke emotion.
yes.
Pop music, kind of, but it all does revolve around this just like, hey, capturing the audience, and
But
because of
you
how
got
that's
you got multiple things happening there, and
yeah,
it's been happening since the 70s.
yeah,
There's an evolution of this. So one thing you guys are talking about, the live show, and how the drop gets everybody involved. But I would say since the beginning, it's been about getting everybody involved. It's just different now because it used to be that it was a spectacle. It's like, let's put on a show for you. You learn our songs and sing them with us, but we're presenting all through the 80s. And a little bit different than the hip hop scene. That's where it was just really getting a foothold, was in the 80s. And at that time, the record labels were trying to like figure out how to mix these genres and cross audiences. That's where it was
Rick Rubin.
happening before that, I know, but it really got obvious when you mix Aerosmith with Run DMC.
Exactly.
It's like you okay, you guys are stretching it a bit there, but but everybody remembers that song and video. So walk this way, it's very well known. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, getting later than that is when it got more into new metal, and you got these bands that were rap rock. So it did start melding the genres. But this is coming out of the glam period. This is coming out of, hey, we're putting on a big show for you, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a party, but you're watching the band on stage do this and enjoying it. Spectator event. In the early 90s, it got more intimate and raw, where all the glam bands started doing acoustic, and this new thing called grunge was happening that was just pure raw emotion, man. Even if they couldn't play or sing well, it didn't matter. It was
mm-hmm.
raw. And that
Mm-hmm.
made its way into power pop, which, again, was very raw. It's just super raw emotionally, higher energy, not as dark, not as, what do you call that, angsty, but which then I saw lead its way into, I was coming out of that glam scene and the bands I was in back then in the mid 90s, especially early to mid 90s. And it was weird. It was weird. We had Spin Doctors getting popular, and bands like the one I was in, Rhythm Circus or Human, we were mixing that Spin Doctors sound with some heavier rock stuff as well. And it was just weird. It was cool. It was fun, but it was weird. In my opinion, and what I went through in the 90s, especially like really seeing my music career take off, the 90s was transitional. It was revolutionary, but it was very much a transitional period. As by the end of the 90s, you got the workings of modern metal, like deathcore and metalcore, and especially getting into the all screams type thing. That by the end of the 90s, that became more mainstream and started to be more commercialized. Then you get into the 2000s and you start to see the homogenization of music, for lack of a better term. I know I'm talking like as I've been in this a long time. To see the angst come back and, you know, emo get super popular and start melding angstiness with better production, and production got cheaper too. So it got easier. It wasn't $20,000 a day in a good studio anymore. Like people were actually able to afford home stuff now and demo stuff at home, or demo stuff in a smaller studio, and it sounded good. And I still see that the homogenization side, I see more as the commercial industry, people wanting to make money on it. They started seeing what does the audience connect with the most, what's the most fun, what works really well live, let's do that as the song. And then you know, how do we mix these different genres together so that we can cross-pollinate the fan base and see if we can take the best of both worlds, or best of three different worlds, and mash them together and make it a really cool thing. So if we can do that, maybe we make a lot more money. But at the same time, the commercial music was highly influencing all of the bands that were up and coming, all the bands that were really trying to get moving. So garage bands and local bands and all these were being heavily influenced by commercial music.
Yes.
And now we're getting to the time where breakdowns became a big thing because people loved it live. You started to hear it more in everything. And I think that's, I don't know, that it still happened in the late 90s when they were just getting started in the real, like the screaming metal scene was just getting started. But the more people started enjoying that, you started seeing it happen a lot more, even in rock shows, man, to where the middle of the song would just go into this really strong drum beat and everybody would go crazy over it.
Yeah, even Nickelback's doing that now.
Yep. And then bringing that up more towards modern day, and it's split from what I've seen. And you've seen a lot of changes in the last few years of, hey, rock's dying. Oh, no, wait, rock's coming back. Pop's dying. No, wait, metal's dying. It's going underground again. No, it's not. It's coming. That's because they're mixing everything. Yeah. And now, like, I saw a video recently about the subgenres of metalcore. And that was hilarious to watch because he went through, I don't remember all of them, man, but you got more into the deathcore side. You got more into the heavier stuff. You got more of the stuff that's inspired by heavy metal, by the older metal, and bringing in those types of guitar riffs, very guitar riff driven, and solos and stuff like that. Then you've got stuff that's mostly clean singing and kind of emo-ish, and there might be some screaming in it here and there. And then you've got what he called popcore. Like I can relate to that. A lot of the big bands in commercial music right now have verses that are very much just a pop song, maybe a darker, more angsty or emotional or a love story. It's still very emotional, but pop. And then it gets heavier in the chorus, where sometimes it just sounds like hard rock.
Yep.
And then, oh wait, there's a scream. Okay, it's got to be metalcore now.
Yeah.
Like,
Rain City Drive. Yeah.
Oh, you're hearing this melding of everything, and that's something I was telling you guys earlier before we recorded. That listening through all these playlists, getting ready to talk about this. It's stuff from 30 years ago or 20 years ago when metal was taking more mainstream. And it's still popular. Killswitch Engage.
Still huge.
Yeah, it's
shows and the people they pull in.
Yeah.
Yep. And then you have, if you listen to a Bring Me the Horizon concert, it is all over the map. Yeah, super heavy to super poppy and kind of upbeat. And it's all over the place. And And I think you're starting to hear that on more in commercial music. It's still albums, right? So you're still hearing that, and it's heavily influencing the local scene. But what I'm hearing now, listening to hard rock playlist, I think I told you guys this earlier. You hear hip hop influences, you hear metal influences, you hear blues influences in that. Going more into the metal side, you hear like you were saying, that EDM influences, the hip hop influences, the pop influences stuff. It's just heavier. I think to me that makes it much easier to find a unique spot, especially since production wise everything's kind of sounds the same. And that's again, that's a homogenization of music I was talking about. Everything starts sounding the same because it makes money for the record labels. People like that sound on a grand scale, so commercially it works. But the ones that really stand out are the ones that grabbed onto a particular sound. Think Dead Poet Society has a very unique southern rock sound that can get really heavy, but they're not heavy. You know, it's really interesting. Bad Omens, that's gone very, very poppy.
Yep.
But they still hold on to that metal element and those influences in it. You have I'm sure y'all can name more than that. Name a few. Name a few and describe them.
Yeah. I hear, especially right now, a lot of like these like more hardcore, not hardcore, but like metalcore kind of things, like Architects, I Prevail. They're starting to like rebel and like go heavy again. Like Architects just came out with Seeing Red, which was like pretty much a shout out to the fans. You'd be like, see, we're still heavy. I Prevail, their screamer, he was in a studio session and started unleashing more screams, like heavier stuff on their new record. And I'm like, these guys are now like rebelling and trying to go even heavier. So you see this like dichotomy of like people going like pop, and then people like, I'm rebelling and I'm going super heavy.
Oh,
this like split.
I mentioned Bring Me the Horizon. They keep going back and forth.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just all over. They'll be like, okay, now we did the hard shit. Like the fans will be like, I want to hear the soft stuff. So then they do that. Next album, next album, next album. It's very interactive. I think that's kind of what's happening too, is it's like they're responding to the comments. Like these things are like very like the audience has a say of what the band kind of does from an like when the band cares, then it's a they're very influenced by the listener. And it's a very more, it's like kind of what you said, it's a more intimate thing, not only in the shows, but now in the way the communities and the songwriting and all that kind of like are all now one and the same. People live streaming their recording sessions, taking it like input from the comments and being like, oh, sure, we'll try that riff. And then next thing you know, that commenter had part in that riff.
Yeah, the communal, the democratization of music in that way. I think that's awesome for connecting with your audience. Like, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. And in the end, I think that's, even in the commercial bands, that's what they're trying to go for, is what are the things that seem to actually really connect with our audience and get them to get riled up and love what's happening. I think on a smaller level where you don't have a label over you dictating a lot of those things and following the numbers, you have a lot more room to experiment and get direct feedback from your fans and keep moving and have fun with it. And I'm not saying, you know, I saw the same thing with hip hop and R&B, how they started to meld together, especially when Post Malone got super popular. He was singing, but it was hip hop. Like that caused a big stir in the industry, not negative, just like they're all like, wait a second, you're actually singing. You know, it was really interesting to see that. But then you had, you know, Kanye West singing or rapping in a Katy Perry song, and it was weird. So they're experimenting too, and they're trying to see what makes money. But for us that don't need to operate in front of 50 million fans directed by a record label that wants to just figure out what makes the most money and it all starts sounding the same, well, we have that option to say, well, what did y'all think of this? Should we change that? Can we do something different with it? And you see that in these 15-second videos a lot of guys are putting out. They're like, they'll talk to them and say, hey, you know, I got this new song idea. What do you think? And they'll just start singing it for 15 seconds. and then the next day they do it again. And a month into it, they're like, I'm thinking about releasing this. What do y'all think? And what they're not saying is they actually already recorded it because they got enough feedback for it already. But it's still that connection with the audience is so direct. I don't see that with the record labels. They're still trying to be a spectacle more than that direct connection, and still trying to figure out how to have that connection when you still have a separation from the audience. It's weird to me, man.
Yeah.
I don't like going to rock shows and metal shows. Some of them are awesome. I'll give it that. 90% of the shows I've been to, it's like, what is happening?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not even moving. They just have lights that do this and they don't move anywhere. It's like, what's going on?
Artistry
You
there,
can't just depend on the song anymore. You got to depend on the connection with the audience.
Yeah.
And there are those that have that. And seeing in this moment was absolutely amazing lives. Having Nothing More, seeing what they do live and stuff. They're so energetic. They really connect with the audience and they want to rile them up. Within this moment, it is a spectacle, but it's eerie and it's creepy, and it's like the whole audience feels that, and half of them dress up like the lead singer. So there's a connection there, and they built that. They did costume contests for a long time. Anyway, I guess I'm getting off track here, talking more about the general music industry. And
oh, you're good.
But where does that put us as singers? What have y'all seen from, let's say, Mick Jagger, who that was his sound, Ozzy, that was and still is his sound. Like, it's just, that's Ozzy. You hear him sing, he does one thing, and it's him. Very much him. Yep. So that was the late 70s. It's different now. What are y'all seeing happen? Just singing technique-wise, singing style-wise, like how are we having to approach this as singers, or what are you seeing other singers do compared to what used to be done?
I still think people, like the big bands, say like, just there's multiple approaches to it, which I think is the beauty of it. Is there's Disturbed, there's Bring Me the Horizon. You hear them, you know them. Like, that's just that sound. And then you have people like, even like Adele, like the reason she's so good at singing is because she uses all these different dynamics, vowel shapes, all these things that make it very unique in its own way, and then thus emotional. I think I see a lot of people, especially going between screams, light singing, heavy singing with distortion, even some high notes like I Prevail, like these big architects, all that. It's like, if you can approach these things with the dynamics of the song, where people are going between that pop verse, the heavy chorus, the screamed bridge and breakdown, I think a lot of people are moving into that direction and kind of trying to do it all. And I think that's kind of the beauty, is you have this dichotomy of like Disturbed, he's got his very signature sound, and then you have like I Prevail, they have two singers and they're doing such diverse stuff. You can kind of be anywhere in this spectrum and lock in with fans who are on this, like, I like having people with range, but I like when I can listen to a song and be like, aren't like that person's like what I want to sound like, or that's a very specific sound that I really like. And as like a vocalist, it allows you to push the boundaries and know that that will work. If you want to be able to do the screams, do all the dynamic R&B singing and high notes and all that stuff, like you can push it endlessly and people will appreciate that still. And if you lock into something, then you become marketable in a sense. So you can have this wiggle room of like, you can really do anything that you want with your voice if you start locking in on the distinct sound, say, or the versatility, like Adele, and then you're able to.
But to say that marketable, I want to clarify something in that too, because I think we're all on the same page. We've had so many talks about this. It's about providing value and connecting with your fans. When we say marketable, it's about like, are you providing enough value that people want to support you? I'm not saying commercialize, sell out, go for the money. That doesn't work anyway in the long run. Like, you chase the money. What is the old adage? Like, money talks, I'll not deny. I heard it once. It said goodbye. That's don't chase the money. Chase the value. Chase how much value you can add, how much connection your fans feel with you that they want to support you. Dude, what you're saying about the voice rings very true from thinking Mick Jagger, thinking I said Ozzy. So we're talking Rolling Stones, Black Sabbath, and arguably early Iron Maiden, Queensryche, Judas Priest.
Mm-hmm.
That at least commercially it morphed into power ballads. like like this is where we want to be now because we can be emotional. But then it was like everything that came out was power ballads, and that was the height of it. And there were still a few party songs, but it was mostly power ballads and starting to turn into love songs. And then the raw emotion came out. And I know I've gone through all this already, but I think what you're saying, you can have all of that in the same song. You don't have to be stuck in this is my sound. You're like, oh, what if I want to go airy for this song? And it's not the level of STP's number 5, which it sounded like a different singer on every single song. It sounded like a totally different band every single song on that album. It didn't sound like STP, and they had already set a brand and then did something totally different. That's dangerous. It's not to the level, in general anyway, as what is his name? Devin Townsend is a singer who constantly moves his voice around, and some singers do that.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that. You don't have to constantly move your acoustics and your voice is changing through these different things. That can be cool too if you can grab onto it in a way that your fans enjoy.
Yes.
It connects with people. It's from what I'm hearing you say, it's like it's okay to be emo and scream in the same song. Spirit Box. There you go.
Exactly. I was trying to bring that name up. I was like, what's Deep Blue or what of the album, you know? Like, yeah, Spirit Box is awesome.
I would think also, who does Heaven in Hiding? Eminence. That Heaven in Hiding specifically was what I was thinking about. How it's this really soft, really intimate thing, and then like it gets very emotional in the chorus, and then by the end of the song, he is screaming, and it's a huge dynamic range, and it connects with people.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, Matt, I don't want to cut you out of this, man. What have you seen, man? What are you seeing? How this applies, especially to singers that are listening to this?
Versatility is kind of the main thing that I've noticed in a lot of new singers, a lot of new bands is yes, you find your niche, but going back to what you were talking about, Drew, is and how you have more of a more diverse singers in the bands these days and in the scene. Coming from going back to get into like the 2010s, if you couldn't sing higher than like if you couldn't sing around like G-A, high C, all that stuff, like you had no hope. And then you have a bunch of young singers who genuinely feel such a connection to this music, and then they feel like, oh, but I'm never going to be able to do it because I can't sing super high. One singer I think of in particular that helped, I think, to kind of, in my opinion, break that trend is Andy Bierzak from Black Veil Brides, who came in, and I remember I read an interview of his where he was like, yo, I heard all these singers that, these quote unquote tenors or these higher voice guys that were just like breaking glass with their voice. And then all of a sudden he said, like, I stopped trying to be like that. And he just played into more of what his sound was. And I think that's more important than anything. And it's something we're seeing a lot more. I think I Prevail also did the same thing. I don't remember. I don't know his last name. Brian, the main clean singer, is definitely a lower, more aggressive, more powerful voice than I think I was used to hearing in the scene for a long time. So hearing not just somebody that I felt like I could match with, but like somebody that stayed in the same realm, in the same scene, but still had more parts, more versatility to his voice that I could actually lock into, I think was super, super amazing. Really healing, in my opinion, for the scene in general, for singers in the scene. Especially coming from singers like Kellen Quinn and Vic Fuentes, who are like, there's just no way unless you have that type of voice that you're just going to be able to sing
their just suddenly do it.
Right,
And
exactly.
that can take years to really grow into that voice. Uh,
Exactly.
but just to be fair here, yes, there's singers like Pete Steele, Typo Negative, but it was more underground. It had a smaller following. It wasn't commercialized on a grand scale.
Mhm.
There's singers like more recently in rock, Poets at the Fall.
Mm.
Marco from Poets at the Fall never
Yeah.
sings above an F4.
Mhm.
That's not that high. And I
No.
think he's pulling chest to do that. So it's like he doesn't, I don't know this for sure, but it seems like listening to him, he doesn't know how to sing higher than that. Maybe he
Mhm.
does, but he
Mhm.
doesn't choose to.
Yeah.
And
I
and they're huge, man. They're doing
yeah.
really well. And they have great songs that still have big dynamics, even though he doesn't sing up super high.
Well,
Mm.
and I think something else that helps is now entering into this new kind of this new era of the scene where even 20 years ago, let's say, if you went to go get singing lessons, you were going to sing in this style that you don't want to sing. It's usually classical, musical theater, whatever it is, pop, even like very few singers had, unless you wanted to like work with like a super high end person. That kind of education wasn't available, and so now we have this influx of metal singing teachers, teaching people how to scream, how to sing in this style, and taking that more of a, I don't want to say methodical approach, but just kind of like, oh, you want to sing like this is how you're going to do it. I don't care what voice type you have, whatever, this is how you're
Mm.
going to do it. I think the inclusion of that in the last even just like 10, 15 years has been incredible, and it's definitely started to change the scene, because now it's less about singers just going out and shredding their vocal folds in an attempt to do what is a simple scream. Um, Now they have the ability to do it, and now it's becoming something that you can teach, that you not
Oh,
just
yeah.
teach, but learn. It's that you can learn. Sorry, but you know what I mean.
And I can say this even for a lot of the people I've seen in touring bands we've had as students. 1.5, 2 octaves is a normal range. It's a normal range for people to
Mhm.
have if they haven't really developed their voice and haven't gotten the instruction they need to know even how to develop their voice past that.
Yeah.
And you still have super famous singers like Villavalo from him. Is
Mm.
that how you say his name? I'm probably getting it wrong.
So yeah, you're good.
I'm terrible with names, man.
Me too. You're
Um,
good.
but yes, he has a 5 octave range, which is something to aspire to. I have a five, I think it's almost 5.5 octaves now. That took many, many years to develop. Do I
Mhm.
ever use that whole range? No. Lovalo, half of his songs are totally singable by everybody. But
Yeah.
he's just singing in that third octave, rarely going above it. And a lot of the songs he does, and it sounds awesome.
Mhm.
And then there's sometimes he goes up super high.
Yeah.
I thought up Pete Steele. Sometimes he went up to the A.
Yeah.
Not what he's known for. He's known for being the low singer,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in rock and metal, we've definitely come out of an era of vocal acrobatics for the sake of showing off.
Mhm.
And there's still some people who do that, but much more into what does the song call for?
Mhm.
That's within my ability to do it. How much dynamic can I add to this and emotion can I put into this so it connects with people better?
Yeah.
And really following like we brought up earlier, following the crowd more, not to be a crowd pleaser, because it's still got to come from you,
Yeah.
but listening to how are you actually connecting with people? Are you doing so much with your voice that the people you usually naturally connect with are getting lost, but they don't know how to connect with what you're doing?
Yeah.
Or are you doing it in such a way that they're like, dude, that is amazing. That's so awesome. That just like grabbed me and drug me in with you. That's the response you actually want.
Mhm.
So I think we're all saying experiment, have
Yeah.
fun with it,
Yep.
work with what you have, work with the voice that you have now, and see how you can incorporate those dynamics to get the message of emotion across that connects with people.
Mhm. And
Mhm.
not every and like going off of that, like not every song is going to be a single. Like keeping
Yeah.
that in mind as well. Like play with the versatility, and not trying to make every single song something that like is going to be featured on the album, something that's going to make the listeners lose their minds. Sometimes people just need to sit down and listen to music and be like, yeah, that was really good, and you can play with the different parts of your voice using those. You don't always need to break barriers. Sometimes just write a song for the sake of writing a song.
Yes, 100%.
Write 1,000 bad songs so you can get one good one, right? And keep the others for reference, because there might be something awesome in there you can use later. When it comes to just writing in general, I'd say sometimes you don't even need to sing. What's connecting with the people you want to connect with? That's what you got to look at, and not what's going to open their pocketbooks, but what's going to give you a genuine connection with them. What's going to make them feel what you're creating. One awesome thing, I guess it's kind of wrapping it up, but one awesome thing you can do now is that direct feedback. And that's not putting yourself out in front of the world and asking for feedback, which the internet can be a very cruel place. But finding a community where everybody is using constructive criticism and helping each other and wanting to see each other improve and giving the feedback that you may not agree with it, but you don't feel like they put you down. They're trying to help. And being able to, having a safe place. And I say this a lot, but we'll get into stage fright in another podcast. But I do say this a lot to people dealing with stage fright too. Put yourself out in a place that's safe to mess up, a place that's safe to be bad, and get the feedback you need. There's a theater company in New York that does exactly that. They test all their plays to a small test audience, where they can experiment with things and see how the audience reacts to it. That's awesome, man. All you have is open mic night to test out some things and see what you can do with your voice, and that's great. Not open mic, I'd say karaoke nights. Half the people going up, usually more than half the people going up, can't sing at all. They're just having fun. Do that. Record yourself. Get some feedback from them. That's not just encouragement. That's actually some constructive feedback, constructive criticism on it.
I've had students send me their karaoke videos. It's good to have.
And do you guys have anything else that you want to add to this?
I think I'm
cool.
I think I'm good.
That's a lot of freedom to be able to say, okay, I like this from this genre, I like this from this genre, I like this from this genre. Let me try all those together and see how it works. And then get some feedback on it. So I do want to say, if you want a safe place to get feedback, anybody listening to this, and to continue this conversation, even talk about our different podcast episodes, or just learn about improving your voice and improving your career, and have a community of people that all are there to help each other. That's what we're building in our community, our Rock Singing Success community, at school.com/rock singing success. That's SKOOL.com/rock singing success. And we hope to see you over there, continue the conversation. It's free to look around, but we do charge $1 a month for keeping spammers away. If that's too much for you, reach out to me. Reach out to any of us. And I mean, honestly, it's free. I just want to keep spammers out.
Makes sense. That makes sense.
So hopefully we'll see you there.